Did you want to go in order?
Well, I don't have it in like chronological order.
Oh,
My notes aren't in chronological order.
I took notes as I went, so all mine are.
Okay, I tried, but that didn't really end up working out that way. I mean, I wanted to start with maybe like possible criticisms of the book
Okay.
and just get that out of the way first, and then we can go into just like general stuff.
Before I think you get to criticism, you have to like introduce things.
Right. So, welcome to the Bookish Things podcast. I'm Scott.
I'm Eric.
This is gonna be dead silence.
Yes. Yeah, I thought you were doing a great job. Keep going.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, criticisms. A lot of people give the criticism that the characters aren't likable. Great Gatsby. This is we're doing the Great Gatsby for the first episode.
That's what I was waiting for.
Yeah. So a lot of people give the criticism that the characters aren't likable, but they're not meant to be likable. That's intentional, right? They're intentionally not likable, and in a book, the quality of a book isn't dependent upon how likable the characters are. It's more dependent upon like how well written they are, how interesting, compelling, complex.
Right. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you see it a lot with TV and movies and stuff now that there doesn't necessarily need to be likable characters. I guess a character is good if you can relate to it. That's what's important, is if you can see some of yourself in them. And I think that's why the characters in this book are important and why the book is important, because you're supposed to see yourself in these people that are nothing but terrible things. And it's supposed to make you see, like, okay, I associate with these people, and I kind of hate myself for associating with these people.
Confront the worst sides of yourself.
Right, because I think depending on who reads the book, you see yourself in different characters. Maybe you see yourself as Nick, the narrator, or, I mean, I've read this book probably 6 or 8 times since high school, which is probably the first time I had to read it, and pretty much every time I've always, like, pretty much taken the side of Gatsby. And I think it's an easy thing to do. Like, he's got a lavish lifestyle, he's cool. It's really easy to relate to wanting something and not being able to get it. But then, as you continue through the book and see the flaws in these characters, you start to realize these are the exact same flaws in yourself. And that's kind of, in my mind, that's kind of the purpose of these unlikable characters, are to show the reader that you have within you at least elements of the same thing. And you're really not going to like the things that necessarily are like kind of deep down in your personality.
Yeah, I think it's as a genre, it's realist, right? So realist doesn't mean that the characters are likable.
Right.
Yeah. Realist means that the characters are real, which means they have flaws. Yeah. What are other is there any criticism that you would point out? Like, I think I read that like Fitzgerald himself intentionally left descriptions of Gatsby as vague on purpose so that there would be some like mystery around him.
Yeah.
Not what he does, but also like his appearance too.
I've read, yeah, stuff like that too.
So that's intentional on his part.
Right.
I know Fitzgerald himself, he wasn't too great with like time, and he wasn't too great with like geography as a writer. So like, or just in general, he wasn't like too great with geography. So, like those are things that like the timeline of the book is maybe a bit weird. Like all of this takes place over the course of like a summer, but you don't know exactly how long.
Right.
He does a lot of like vague passes of time from like a few weeks ago or a few days ago.
It's definitely hard to track down. I was taking notes on that as I read that. I think for the first time since I like started reading this book, it really hit me how vague all the time is. I think in the very intro, when Nick is kind of introducing himself and the story and the time, he's talking about it from the past, but he comments that it was just a summer of his life when he met Gatsby. But the way it jumps around, like, it doesn't feel like just a summer. Like, you feel like it could take place in a week or over the course of a couple years. It's interesting. I liked what you were saying about vague characters, like for Gatsby. I know I've read stuff online about the vagueness of his character, like in terms of appearance, and a lot of that stuff has led to, I guess you call them like fan theories, kind of popping up. That like I read a academic article that posited that like Gatsby was black, because the only like real descriptions of him are like he has like short dark hair and like tan skin, like that's really all you get from him. But I don't think it changes anything that dramatically if he is.
I don't think he was, because I think we would have seen some kind of like racist comment from Tom.
Right.
If he was. But yeah, no, I don't think it would change much if he was on that kind of read.
I mean, I think that you might say like, well, people like Tom kind of hate him, but the whole point of the story is that people like Tom hate him because he's new money.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't have anything to do with the person he is. It's just that he doesn't come from wealth.
Right.
And so that's where all like the rumors about him start to come up. The other kind of similar to like Gatsby might be black, like major theory I've heard from a lot of people, which is also pretty popular, is that Nick is gay and in love with Gatsby. And I don't know if I would follow in love with Gatsby. I mean, possibly. But I think it's actually, I had that in mind when I started this reading, and it's pretty clear that Nick is gay.
You think?
I mean, there's a scene when they go, I think it's chapter 2, when they go to a friend's apartment in the city, and they get drunk, and Nick starts off by saying, I've only been drunk just twice in my life, and the second time was that afternoon. They introduce Mr. and Mrs. McKee, and my notes just say Mr. McKee is, it just says, pale, feminine man, and he's a photographer. And then Mrs. McKee is just described as shrill, languid, handsome, and horrible. And they, as that little chunk of the afternoon progresses, it becomes night. Tom is there getting drunk with Myrtle.
Right.
And then there's like, it kind of blurs together, which makes sense from...
Because they're drunk.
A drunk writer. Yeah, a narrator. And let me see if I can find it. I know at one point they get up. Tom hits Myrtle. They are all drunk and laying around. And... oh, where is it? So... at some point, Nick gets up. He follows Mr. McKee out to the elevator. They have some weirdly suggestive dialogue. At one point, the elevator man says, keep your hand off the lever. And then it fades back to Nick beside Mr. McKee's bed while he's in his underwear looking over his own photos. And then it immediately jumps to Penn Station, like him sleeping at like 4 a.m.
Yeah, with no idea how he got home that night.
Right. And so you can't make many other assumptions than gay if Nick followed a man drunk out to his apartment just downstairs. And then
he was desperate to leave because they were getting in a domestic after Tom hit Myrtle.
Right. And so he was drunk, and there's no other reason really. I assume you wake up or you come to next to a man in his underwear in his bed.
I guess.
Unless Mr. McKee was just like, let me get comfortable, and
yeah.
then let me show you some photos, and then Nick was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's possible. I know that, like, the characters... So I mean, Daisy Buchanan is based off of Zella Fitzgerald.
Right.
And Nick and Gatsby are based off of like two different sides of Fitzgerald. So maybe, I mean, the only character I've really identified with is Nick, and this is my 4th time reading the book. Yeah, I could see that read. He's intelligent, observant, and he doesn't seem too interested in what's her name? Jordan, yeah, that much.
It's interesting too, because also when reading about this stuff, the way he describes people as a narrator, he describes Tom in like almost a very strange, kind of like almost like admiring way. He talks about like how strong his like shoulders and arms look, and it says that he like fills up like the boots he's wearing.
Well, he's just supposed to be like a very physical being, right? Like he's a jock. He's muscular. He's like throwing Nick around like he's some kind of rag doll.